Hi YouTube, what's up? It's been a while. I'm Olivia, aka Biblioghoul, and for the past 2 months I've been feeling like reading books related to the ocean, but when that started in spring I was like, oh, I'll probably just wait for summer to come along. And then I had so many books related to the ocean that it became hard to choose. So I was thinking I'll just read a few and then maybe I could do a part two if you guys are interested. So I figured the perfect book to start this off with is my most anticipated book of the year that actually came out around my birthday in April, and I immediately bought it, but I just kept reading books from the library and not this book. So I put my foot down and said, Olivia, you need to read this book. Like, it's your most anticipated book. It's not hard. And that book is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I'm actually already like a quarter of the way into this as I'm filming the intro, and it's already everything that I dreamed it will be, so I'll see how the rest goes. I thought this book, which is called The Octopus Museum by Brenda would be interesting. I know it's supposed to touch on climate change and other issues in the ocean, but also in a poetic way, obviously, and I just love the cover, so I've been interested in picking this one up. I also thought it would be fun to have a Shape of Water moment, so I'm hoping to read. This is Caliban by Rachel Ingalls, and then some actual learning about the ocean. When I was like a preschooler, I wanted to be a marine biologist, and then I found out that sharks exist. I'm sure I knew before, but I feel like I became afraid of sharks. So yeah, didn't end up doing that, but would love to learn actual knowledge about the ocean. And then I'll probably listen to an audiobook throughout all of this, so yeah, I will check back in with you after I finish Our Wives Under the Sea.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so we'll go straight and we'll just turn right to Junction.
Come on, good boy. Good boy. Oh, that's enough water. Yeah.
Hi, I finished Our Wives Under the Sea, and it was just as amazing as I expected it to be, and it's definitely one of my favorite books of the year. I realized that in my intro I forgot to mention that I moved, so if you see like new background, that's what's up, and that's also why I stepped away from YouTube for a little bit, because I was dealing with that and other things. Anyways, I'm super excited to have, this like big bookshelf, although it has made me buy a lot of books to fill it up. So I heard Books and Bow, I think is the name of their channel, talking about this book and how it's like a modern gothic novel. And I haven't heard anyone else say that. I think that's a really perfect way to put this book. When I was going into it, it's described as a horror book. There definitely was body horror, and I've never read Lovecraft before, but those Lovecraftian vibes, but that's not the central focus of the novel. So I could see how some people reading the book would be disappointed, but I wasn't, because I love literary fiction, I love gothic fiction, I love the buildup of dread, and in the case of this book, grief. So it's about two women that are married and their relationship. Leah is some kind of, I don't know if she's called a marine biologist or like a diver, or I can't remember what her title is. She will go on these trips in a submarine into the deep unexplored parts of the ocean, but on this journey in particular something goes awry. And so you have both of the characters' perspective. You have Miri's perspective after Leah returns from this trip, dealing with her not being herself and the transformation that's occurring in terms of body and mind. Trying to be vague to not spoil things. So you have that perspective, but you also have Leah's perspective in the submarine. So the whole time you're trying to figure out if there are answers for what happened to her. And this book is one of those that has more questions than answers. Even though that would have been an interesting book too, I still love that the book didn't do that because I love what it did do. It's broken up into different sections of the novel, which are apparently the different levels of the sea. So you kind of like have the sensation of just like emerging deeper into the mystery and like seeping into different layers. And because this book is so much about grief, Miri, we learn about her past dealings with grief with her mother, or I guess failures to deal with grief as well. And then you see how she is grieving even though Leah's there, what their relationship was throughout the book, and you see glimpses of what the relationship was before, and how, since Miri is the selfish one in the relationship and Leah kind of brought that light, it's an interesting perspective. Miri's not particularly likable, although I did like her character because I could very much relate to some of the ways that she acts and the thoughts that she's having. So yeah, in some regards, this book is about loneliness and selfishness and about needing to let go. It's about fascination gone too far, but also transforming into what you were always meant to be. And if you like books where the government is being sketchy in terms of science, there's a little bit of that in this book. But overall, I really love it. And I want to read Julia Armfield's first book, which is, I believe, short stories. I think it's, what is it? It's like Salt Slow or something. So I definitely want to pick that up. Let me know if you've read that and if you liked it, or if you read this and what your thoughts were about it. So yeah, I'm really happy that this book ended up being wonderful, not in the way that I expected, but even better than what I expected. On the other side of the coin, I did go through this, and I don't really have that much success with poetry in general, so I would take like this review with a grain of salt. But to me, it was kind of like 3-star read. I literally was trying to remember what the book was even about, even though it's only been like a day or so since I've read this book, which is not the greatest. There are some interesting poems that kind of take a political angle, which is interesting. Like there's one called Queries, How Do We Define People? And it's going through, you know, children, people of color, women, and like what rights and categories and how to define like humanity based on rights, and it's interesting. The book does go through climate change and upheaval. The book is broken down into different sections as though it's an exhibit, and that's my field, museum, so I thought that would be cool too. But I wasn't a huge fan of the writing in this book in general, so I knew when I started it that I was kind of turned off by the book. So yeah, I'm hoping that the other books I pick up will be a better experience. Also, I figured out which audiobook I wanted to listen to. I can't remember whose channel I heard them talking about this book on, but I will put her channel right here so you can see. She gave it a glowing review, so I'm going to listen to The Island of Sea Women, and I will check in later about that.
What's a 20-footer?
25.
Hi, so I wanted to give an update on Mrs. Caliban, which I finished the other day. I've actually been trying to watch some ocean-themed movies as well while reading these books, so it was funny that I was reading this book, which is basically Shape of Water light. This woman who's like a housewife and not getting along with her husband because their child died, and they've been traumatized ever since. So when this frog man-esque creature escapes from a science lab, she lets him into the house and starts speaking with him and getting to know him, and it does become intimate. So I watched The Creature of the Black Lagoon on the same day I was reading it, which was fun. I'd been waiting to watch that for a while, and I watched Jaws for the first time as well this weekend. I know, it's horrible, but I liked both. Jaws, was a really well-made film, but also I saw somebody say the other day that Steven Spielberg only makes stories about men, which I don't know, but I definitely thought of that quote when I was watching this movie. I was like, oh, I get why this is beloved, but it's never gonna be my top movie. But yeah, it's exactly what you would expect. It's kind of interesting that the character has lost her son, I believe. Yeah, I think it's her son, because there's kind of that dichotomy with the creature as well. Like, he does know language, but he was being like experimented on in this lab, so they're talking about the ethics of doing this and freeing him, and so she is kind of mothering him in a sense with teaching him all these new skills, and it gives her purpose, but at the same time, feeling that love that she's not getting with her husband, but realizing that, she also cannot keep the creature within her house forever and having to let that go. So I really enjoyed it, actually. I'm glad I picked it up. I did my alligator-y lip thing in this part just because I knew I was going to be talking about the creature. But I also finished an audiobook that I've been listening to. It's The Island of Sea Women. I'll put the right name here if that's not it. It is covering a specific way of life in this Korean island, Jeju, through conflict with Japan and their occupation, and as well as through the Korean War and the United States. It's a story of friendship and tragedy, so it follows a main character and her best friend. Her best friend, I believe, is half Japanese, so in a society where the people are under this regime, she is kind of outcast but is taken in, and they grow up together and they go through all these different parts of their lives together. And it's interesting to see how their differences lead to different lives, even though they live so close to one another. Oh, and I forgot to say that it's called the Island of Sea Women because in this particular society, women, they're called henyo, are diving into the water to provide fish, abalone, octopus, all different kinds of food for the family. And there are interesting gender dynamics in the novel too, because there's a lot of reflection on what men and women are doing in the society. The men are kind of more philosophical and perform death rites when someone passes in the family. and diving is very dangerous. You see a lot of accidents and death related to this profession throughout the novel, but the novel also deals with the brutality of, you know, Japanese and US troops and how that's inflicted on these women and their families. It was a really touching novel, and I'm really glad that I listened to it. I think you should check it out if you're into historical fiction. So I'll probably watch a couple more movies related to this theme. And I'm also going to pick up The Blue Wonder, Why the Sea Glows, Fish Sing, and Other Astonishing Insights from the Ocean. And I will check back in with you after I finish those.
Whoa. Ooh. Eerie.
Hi. So since I checked in last, I've watched 2 more movies. I watched this short little film that's actually available on YouTube, so I'll link it in the description box below. That's about enslaved people turning into mermaids. And it was only like 6 minutes, so not a ton, but I really enjoyed the beautiful illustration style to it, so I would recommend it. And then I watched Underwater with Kristen Stewart, and honestly, I think I had a little higher hopes for the movie. I did enjoy it. I thought that the underwater creatures were really cool looking, and I thought that Kristen Stewart did a good job of acting anxious and in crisis while also like knowing all of the right moves to do, which yeah, I've actually watched 2 aquatic movies recently where the women leads were amazing at survival. And I was thinking about myself and if I could ever survive under these circumstances, and probably not, but yeah, so that those elements are enjoyable, and it was a great movie. But I think I'm realizing that, you know, just movies with creatures, there's no like ethical questions. Well, I guess there were ethical questions in that there was drilling and there, you know, they were exploring the sea. Of course, there's the question of should humans be going here and doing these things, or should they just leave Mother Nature alone for once, even though like all of our plastic has infiltrated the deep sea, so it doesn't really make a difference. I guess there was a message, but I don't know. I feel like it was more of a like something disastrous is happening kind of movie than I don't know, than more of a narratively interesting ethical story, which is more of my preference, but I still enjoyed it. And yeah, so I tried to do a kind of like jellyfish look, and then I messed up with something and like tried to go back and it just wasn't the same. But I'm not like an expert in any way in makeup, but it's been bringing me a lot of joy to like transform into creatures recently. I was always like cast as creatures and old men in plays growing up, and at the time I was like, why? But now I kind of feel like I really enjoy that like transformation process. And I don't know anything about makeup besides just, you know, like everyday things. So if anybody has any like tips for beginner colorful makeup or colorful eyeliner or anything at all, let me know, because I'd love to know. But anyways, the last book. So the last book I read was Blue Wonder. And although I enjoyed this book, it did take me a really long time to read, and I've been noticing in the past few months that nonfiction books have really been dragging me down. Not that I'm not interested, but just they're taking forever to read. This one is very much like, here's a bunch of facts you'll never remember type thing, but that might like bubble up to your brain at some point in a conversation. You learn about, you know, the way the ocean works and the smallest creatures inside of it, and I feel like it helped me to get a better understanding of how the ocean and the climate are connected and how much the ocean helps us to survive and really takes a lot of our bullshit on with pollution, but at the same time, like, things are pretty dire, and like species and coral are really affected by us. So that was sad to read about. I also learned there's a whole section on like fish and sea creature sex, and I learned that, like, on a dark note, male otters are really like violent towards females, physically, sexually, everything. So, you know, we always think of them as these really cute things, but they're really jerks. And I learned that recently about blue jays as well, that they're actually jerks, and they used to be one of my favorite birds, so that's fun. Also makes you think a lot about consumption of fish and like actually realizing the amount of like plastic and other chemicals that sea life are ingesting on another level, although I am trying to go plant-based, so that's just like another reason. But yeah, there is a lot at the end about human destruction of oceans and some things that are being done to help with that. So I enjoyed reading this book, and I learned about the ocean, but overall I think, you know, only certain things that were meaningful to me will stick in my brain. But yeah, it was a good book. And of all the books that I read this weekend, I think my two favorites, surprise, surprise, were Our Wives Under the Sea and Mrs. Caliban. I'd like to do a part 2, expanding more with maybe a nonfiction book about gay pirates or some kind of mermaidy book. My favorite mermaid book is The Deep by River Solomon, which I know like people had mixed reactions to, but I loved. So yeah, I might do a part 2 at some point. So it was really nice to read some books and film. Again, let me know if you liked hearing about movies too, because I do like to watch movies as well. Let me know what your favorite aquatic books are, or some books that you've enjoyed recently. And thanks for tuning in. Bye!